to your point about like, I don't want to see you fail. I don't want to see you distraught. I don't want to see you in a miserable existence. I want you to win because I know I'm going to win.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to do the work that I need to do to learn how to be better.
A message to all the men out there. Like, there's nothing you're going through that can't probably be worked through. You know, like, I think a lot of the time I hate when men go like, that's just how I am.
Oh my
or
God.
whatever.
Oh, no.
You know, I really hate that.
It makes me sad too.
Yeah, and it does.
It is.
Because,
Really
and I
sad.
also think it's like, it's such a disservice to like the growth that you can make as an individual, and especially by like your loved ones and partners and family and all these people, like they want to see you grow, right? Like my exes, ultimately we didn't work in a relationship. Does that mean I don't want to see them grow? That's not what that means at all. If anything, I would love to hear from them when they're in a better place and they've been capable of that growth, because I'm gonna be like, you know what? That's all I ever wanted was like, I want to see everyone eat, right? Mm-hmm. Like, I don't want to see people like struggle or suffer. Just because you did me dirty doesn't mean I want like your life to be ruined or whatever, you know? And sometimes things like don't even need to end on a bad note, right? Like,
you know what I would say to you in that regard, because I definitely agree with what you just said. Sometimes it feels like it's harder though when it doesn't end on a bad note.
well, that was my situation.
Like in the immediacy, I would say. Like,
that was
like
my
you can appreciate
situation.
it later.
It was like a mature
You're like,
thing, and then I blew
feels
up
better,
later.
It feels better when you don't like the
Same.
person. You're like, you know what, you did this to me, so you're dead to me.
No, and you
like that's
you
much easier to
almost,
like start to move on.
And
like,
but I also think people like you need the anger to a certain level to like move on healthy, because it's not anything you can't revisit later, right?
No, you
like
can.
like you're never not going to be in a place where like you can't just unblock them and send them a message and be like,
sure,
you know what, I think like I finally made peace with what happened. You know, I wish you the best. I'm sorry that that's like the way you remember me, but just know like that's not who I am anymore. And you know, I've gotten messages from exes and ex-friends and people like years down the road that where they are very apologetic about how they treated me, and they're very open. And that's where I learned, like, you know, as I have received them, you know, I need to be capable of doing that too.
Absolutely.
For people that I'm upset with, because like life is short, man. Like it's long, but it's short.
No, yeah. In the big picture, I absolutely agree. And I think part of that to me is a function of like age and experience, where you learn to appreciate that more. But I would also say, to me, even with all that pain, right? This is just something I've had to learn, and I haven't touched on it, but I'm not going to go into all it now because I've said it on another episode. Some of us go through a lot of hardship in life, and this is not a pain competition, by the way. But what I've learned how to do very young in life is to try to convert pain into something positive. I've had to learn how to do that, because there's no way I could sit here with you all if I didn't figure that out, because I would have just given up already. But I say that because there can be bright spots and silver linings to things, even the ones that are really hurtful. So situations that ended amicably, but it just didn't have the outcome that you wanted. To me, the best thing, to your point about like, I don't want to see you fail. I don't want to see you distraught. I don't want to see you in a miserable existence. I want you to win because I know I'm going to win. I'm going to do the work that I need to do to learn how to be better, to bring that to this next person so that I can get that from them, because I'm expecting in what I give. But I want that for you too, because you're not a terrible person.
Right.
And I want you to be successful and be happy, but it's easier to desire that for somebody when you're doing that for yourself.
Right.
If I'm miserable and my life ain't going well, I'm gonna be like, man, I hope Shania life sucks.
Yeah.
I hope she's sad every day and she's missing me every day and she's crying over me every day, right? But if I'm out here like, I'm trying to do the best I can for me, and I'm working on myself, and I'm trying to improve my life, then it's easier to look back at you, whether it worked out or not, and say, I hope life goes better for you. I hope it is going better for you. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and wishing that doesn't mean you want them back either, right?
No.
I think like that's the misconception, right? People are like, oh my God, how can you have such positive feelings towards someone who did that? And it's like, Well, you can choose to hang on to like the anger and the upset and all that stuff.
Absolutely.
And let it affect all of your future relationships, because there's always that joke, right, that's like guys get hurt one time in like the 5th grade and then they take it out on their girlfriends for the rest of their lives, and it's like,
if you don't deal with it,
deal with it. But
exactly.
because, you know, men are so repressed emotionally and they aren't given the space to like express themselves, and that's where like the feminist outlook serves men just as much as women 99% of the time, because a woman's empowerment empowers her to be that much more open to you. And I think that's the perspective we miss a lot of the time, is like my feminism has helped me become such a good partner to the men I'm with, because I'm so empowered in myself that I'm not threatened by you as a partner.
Right.
You know, you are my equal, you are who I want to spend my life with. And I have never understood the whole like, you know, oh, I hate my ex and I hope he's like years later.
or being like bitter.
Yeah, being bitter. And it's like, you know, me, obviously you wanted a different outcome, right? You care about this person. You wish they were in your life more. But at the same time, we all make decisions. And then at the end of the day, like, it's going to be, I think there's, you know, I did so much Googling, like post-breakup, like every breakup, I do like all this Googling, and I do it in incognito. Like I'm ashamed, like someone's going to check my search history or something. And like, it's funny because it's like, there's like scientific proof. Like there was a paper I was reading that I even emailed the professor and was like, there's a paywall and I want to read your paper. And he emailed it to me. And it was about how like men experience heartbreak. And I think there's this big misconception that like women experience heartbreak and men don't. And,
that's definitely not true.
And it's such a lie. And it's even scientifically proven like that men do experience heartbreak sometimes at worse levels than women because they can't express it.
Let me add to that real quick. Because I've personally gone through that too. When you're repressed, number one, you don't have the lexicon and the verbiage to actually articulate again what you're going through, right? So that's one thing. That's already hard enough. But then I would make the case to you, and I'm going to go back to what you said earlier when we were talking about moving on, how women can kind of already be mentally and emotionally checking out even though they're still physically present, and then men recognize it when they start to see the woman leave. It's like all the reality floods and hits you in the face at that moment. I have seen in a lot of different spaces and capacities that men take longer to move on. And let me give you an example why I say that. Where women are more adept at expressing and articulating how they feel emotionally, it's easier for them, and you are, I believe, to be able to move forward because you're able to talk it through, to take the resources and the support that you need, and then not quickly, but in an appropriate fashion, then be willing to move on and invite another person in to give them that opportunity to get to know you and start the process again. We don't operate that way. It's not because we can't. Again, this is where we are.
Right.
We're stifled so much that it will, in many cases, it takes us years, where it may take a woman months. It might take a woman 3 months, and it might take us 3 years. To move on from that relationship. And you've like found somebody else and you're like, man, I'm really happy. Maybe you're getting engaged. Maybe you're married and you're about to have a kid already. And I don't mean we're like stuck on the relationship. I mean like we're still trying to learn how to process what happened.
Yeah. I can definitely attest to that.
I can too.
Yeah, like my ex I was with for years, like 2 years after our breakup, he just like showed up at my house. And I was like, in a new relationship, and I was like in a totally different mindset, and he just like showed up at my house, and I got so scared, you know, because it's a safety thing, you know. You never know the intentions people show up with. So I just remember being so scared, and then I was like, what, like 2 years? And I think that really says, that's when I really started like, wow, like men really have like this delayed processing thing with these things, where they're just like, I want to avoid this. I want to run away. I don't want to think about this. And, you know, it's so much better to just deal with it up front.
Of course it is.
Because that way you're not going to carry it with you. Like,
I agree. It's baggage.
Yeah. Like, and men always talk like mommy issues, daddy issues, whatever. But at the end of but there is like that 5th grade girlfriend, man. Like you want to be like tough, but you don't have to do the work, you know?
No, I agree. And that's why I brought it up, because I think a lot of women may not know that, because for you all, I think it is genuinely easier because you're more fluent in the language of speaking on emotions. So naturally, you don't hold on to it for as long. So you're willing to invite a new man in your life, in this example, to get to know you. Whereas for us, man, it's not necessarily that we're always stuck on that past, but maybe we're so avoidant, typically, that when it comes time to sit down with, I'm just like, man, I can't stop thinking about Ashley. 6 months later, 9 months later, 12 months later, 18 months later. And I'm still like, okay, I've kind of processed it to a point, but I still want her back.
Yeah.
And you're over here like, Shania's like, I'm already with this person.
Yeah.
And we're like, but how did you do that? Like, I don't understand. How did that happen already? That's what I meant. And I agree with the delayed processing.
Therapy. Yeah, journaling.
It helps.
Journaling.
Oh, yeah. Oh, you hit another buzzword of mine, ma'am. I'm huge on journaling.
Answering
me
questions.
Too. Especially if like you're naturally artistic. Like, I just want to throw that out there for people. Like, if you were good at writing essays in school, journal, because you will write like. Sometimes I reread my journals. Like when I'm in a good mental place, I read it from like when I'm in a bad mental place. And I'm
it shows you growth.
Yeah. Yes. And I was like, wow, I was really stressed and now I'm fine. And
or it's like, that was so minuscule. Like, what the hell was I crying for? Like,
and
but at the time, it could have felt like the end of the world.
And it usually is in the journal.
And now I understand like what my parents meant by they're like, oh, teenagers, everything's like the end of the world to them. But
because you have no frame of reference,
right? And my sister, she is the mom to two my nieces. Like, she's an amazing mother, and she always like explains when my niece is going through a tantrum. She's like, you have to understand, like, to us it's not the end of the world, but to her it is, because that is her range. That is like her range of emotion. That's what she knows. She's like, we know more, she doesn't.
Correct.
And that is what ever since she taught me that, I view adults that way too. I'm kind of like, they may not know how to handle this because they just genuinely don't know how to handle this. Right.
Correct.
You know, and I'm handling it because I know how to handle it.
Exactly. We have those different experiences. So no, I think that's spot on. Yeah. And that's why I try to talk about it from both sides for the guys, because I don't want, and I'm not saying you all did this, but I don't want women to feel like, okay, we want men to get to that point, but then they keep having the expectation that they're going to not open up and share as much, because that's traditionally how men behave. Because those two aren't going to go together. But if we actually hold space for this, like you're talking about and like you've talked about, we can get to these outcomes. It is very possible. I encourage and challenge us to do this work to get to this point, which is why I love journaling. I actually make every client I work with journal, because it's also a great way to get to learn somebody and learn their viewpoint and how they see the world and how they see themselves. Because again, you can't just know it. Like, somebody has to invite you in and tell you enough about themselves to learn about them. So to me, journaling is the greatest tool, and it's like a check-in point. So if I was heartbroken 18 months ago and I go back and look at that, I'm like, man, I don't feel like that anymore. Maybe it still stings a little bit, but I'm not there anymore. That shows me my own progress. Right? That I'm not in that dark space anymore, and I feel like I'm trending, to a better place.